Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Getting engaged can be stressful. Getting the right ring won't be at BlueNile.com. The jewelers at BlueNile.com have sparkle down to a science with beautiful lab-grown diamonds worthy of your most brilliant moments. Their lab-grown diamonds are independently graded and guaranteed identical to natural diamonds and ready to ship to your door. Get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more with code LISTEN at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com, code LISTEN for $50 off.
Hi guys, and welcome to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones. I'm your podcast host, Tony Evans. Thank you for listening in to my interview come last year, Christmas Day and New Year's Day with Kevin Eustace. I know that it wasn't technically my usual content, but I felt like I wanted to do it. It was my 200th episode, and if you listen to the episode, you'll find out why. Of course, I hope you did. Hope you had a good New Year, a good Christmas. Santa was kind to you and life was good to you. I'm very glad to give 2024 the flick. To be personally honest, on being personal, it was one of the worst years of my life. But having this show and my good friends and my family around me has really helped me get through it. And also, and I want to say this quite openly, therapy. I've been to therapy for grief over the last 6 to 7 weeks, or even longer, in fact, since I got back from the UK from Dad's funeral, and it has really helped. So I'd like to say that if you're struggling out there and you're finding it hard to cope, there are always means and ways. Even if you can't afford a private therapy, your doctor, wherever you are in the world, should be able to point you in the direction of someone to speak to, or there's always lifelines like Beyond Blue and so on, depending on what country you're in. So hopefully that you will seek help and you will get yourself feeling better in the new year. But let's start now with the episode. So King Diamond, Mercyful Fate, two of those names that are synonymous in my head with 80s heavy metal. It's also synonymous in my head with the early days of extreme metal. So a lot of the music that you listen to now, like listening back to a few weeks ago when I reviewed Rot Pit's album, and the dark albums that I've reviewed in the past, like Venom's work and all those black metal episodes and death metal bands, all pay homage. Homage? It's a dirty word. No, sorry. You're all perverts. That's my really bad Life of Brian misquote. Pay homage to the great man himself. Born Kim Bendix Peterson on the 14th of the 7th, 1956 in Denmark. So, he's not a young boy, but he's not an old man either. So he was there at the birth of these heavy metal scene, really. He was very influenced by bands like Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and Deep Purple and the usual heavy stuff and pop stuff that they were at that particular time in history. Hendrix and so on. But he's one of those faces that if you have not seen him, if you don't know what he looks like, when you see it, you'll go, "Ah, yeah, I think I've seen it before." He is the originator of what I would call the corpse paint, although to be honest, there are more extreme versions, but I think he started it. He does remind. He is a big fan of Crazy Arthur Brown. So the Crazy World of Arthur Brown. If you look at images of that, if you know anything about that particular singer, you'll see that he also wore this black and white sort of tribalistic face paint, which I think, of course, is where Kim gets his identity from visually at first. Of course, then he changes it, and it has changed over many years. It changes from album to album, from tour to tour. I mean, now he looks a bit like something from Lord of the Rings, with these, many horned crown and so on. Looks a bit like one of the something from. And I'm not a Lord of the Rings aficionado, but something from Mordor, I would say, one of the ring wraiths. It does look like that if you look at it closely enough. Now, what makes Kim or King Diamond so important to the metal world? Well, firstly, he came around in a time when music, it was an interesting time, and it's a time that I sort of regret that I wasn't old enough to really take in, but a time when just by making music and by being who you were, you could cause national newspapers to write articles about how dangerous you were, and all you were doing was making music. It's fascinating how the mores and the morals of the pre-internet world, of a very devout Christian world, actually, in certain parts of the world, would make you be public enemy number one. Well, we know the Pistols, we know that John Lydon they were one of the first, if not the first, but one of the first to really cause an international scene of uproar with the mothers and fathers of the world. Of course, it happened back in the 50s and 60s with the Beatles and with Elvis, but not with the same kind of fervor and weird anger that these people, of course, Satanic Panic. I mean, I've talked about this before, but King Diamond and Mercyful Fate, right in the heart of that sort of Satanic Panic in the early 80s. A little bit about Kim. He has a countertenor voice, very much a high. If you don't know what a countertenor voice is, a very high. He's got a high octave range. He is is equivalent of a mezzo soprano in a female vocal. He has an extremely large vocal range from middle C right up, and all over the place. He's got a far-reaching falsetto scream, and he's just about one of the most recognizable vocals in all of music, I think. And himself, Bruce Dickinson in the early days, of course, of course, the wonderful Rob Halford, are the three that sort of sit in that voice, but no one quite reaches the levels that Kim or King Diamond does, even now. It's a mixture of traditional vocals and very, very high operatic, almost glass-shattering notes. It's not the death metal or the extreme metal that you are used to now, with all the death growls and the grunting and the animalisticness of it. This is the early days. This is the days when they were taking what was happening in the UK, in the British scene, mixing it with punk, adding it to some traditional heavy rock, as in Deep Purple and Black Sabbath and so on, and were sort of making their own new unique sound. So Merciful Fate. Merciful Fate is they've released a few albums, but to me there is only two albums, traditional Merciful Fate albums before King left. For me, before King left, the reunited albums are good, but I'm going to talk about the very first one, Mellissa, in the second half. King wrote all of the lyrics, and later albums on his King Diamond albums, he's wrote the lyrics and he played the guitar on the recordings, but would get a guitarist for touring. He has from 1974, 1976 is when he entered the music scene, and he started in a band called Brainstorm, taking up lead vocals in that. But then he left there to join Black Rose. Now, I'm not sure if that's named after the Thin Lizzy album, but I'm sort of going to guess it was. And he started experimenting with his satanic persona there when he left that band to join a sort of punk metal outfit called the Brats. Now, we'll quickly jump over to the satanic side of his persona. He is a legitimate Satanist. Now, that does not mean that he sacrifices babies on All Hallows Eve and drinks blood and conjures demons. No. He's connected to the LaVey school of Satanism, so the Church of Satan, which is more about philosophy than religion. In fact, King has often said that he despises organized religions because how can you fight wars over what doesn't exist? Whereas the Church of Satan, and I've got a few friends who follow the LaVeyan Church of Satan. They're more into, if you actually are not scared and do read the book that they came out from that movement, it's all about actually looking after yourself and looking after other people. It's not about drenching your neighbors in blood and all that kind of stuff. There were two different types of Satanists. Okay, he sits in that school. It's more a philosophy, as I said. With the band, that's where he met Hank Sherman, also known as Hank DeWank, when he was in the punk band. They too left and joined Michael Denver from Bratz as well, and formed Danger Zone. Here, they played around for a little while. They met the bass player that was to form the band, to help form Mercyful Fate, Timmy Hansen, who also played with Danger Zone. And then that sort of fizzled out, and they became Mercyful Fate in 1980 to 81. Influenced by prog, actually, and you'll get that because on the first album, Mellissa, Satan's Fall is 11 minutes long. It has 16 different guitar riffs on it. Count them, 16. It's an unbelievable piece of music. The lyrics were inspired by Anton LaVey's Church of Satan, as I said. It was the first of a new wave of black metal that was sort of around the same time as Venom and Bathory. Obviously, Venom named the genre and had the more aggressive, darker side to it, whereas Merciful Fate was more the operatic, the more, I can't say human side of it, but the more accessible side of the genre. They both went on, all three bands, particularly Merciful Fate, went on to inspire thrash and death metal. Metallica, Slayer, and Exodus particularly were big fans of the band. They also went on to inspire the Norwegian black metal scene, but luckily not the nasty side of it, as I said, which I've not touched upon because I don't want to. I've thought about this. I've thought about doing an episode on the Norwegian death metal scene. I've touched upon it, but I don't really want to give these people credit for what they actually did. There was a lot of mental anguish, a lot of very unhappy and very sick people around that time doing very, very silly things in the name of music and Satan and so on. So I will, as I said, I'm not really willing to sort of go. I will one day if I feel like it. They produced 7 albums. As I said, we're going to talk Mellissa, in 1983 album, and then the second album that for me sits in that rank is Don't Break the Oath from 1984. There were several afterwards, but as I said, I'm not really into those albums. I like the original lineup and the sound. The original lineup, as I said, was King Diamond on vocals, Hank Sherman on guitar, Tim Hansen on bass, and Kim Raz on drums. Now, the sound itself is quite unique. It's that time of the music world when you had to produce albums very quickly, very cheaply, and you had to punch them out and then you had to tour like mad with them. It's not like now where they can send it out a year before, get loads of downloads, get loads and loads of exposure, then tour. This was a time when it was album tour, often year after year. And so this was recorded in 11 days. The producer at the time, which is interesting, had never produced a heavy metal band before, and so he didn't actually let the band in while he was mixing and mastering it. This, to much of the chagrin of King and Kim, they did not like it, but he understands in the future, now looking back retrospectively, that why would you want a bunch of newbies, first albums checking over your shoulder from an experienced producer? It just makes no sense to do that, because why would you? Now, the album itself, not this album, but yes, this album, I do apologize, this album released, there was a song off this album that is on the notorious PMRC list, the Parents Musical Resource Centers list from the early 80s, the Satanic Panic list. This was interesting because there are documentaries about this actually, but they were often called the Washington Wives because Tipper Gore, Al Gore's wife, the vice president's wife at the time, was on the committee. Susan Baker, the wife of the Treasury Secretary, James Baker, was on the list, to name but just a few of the famous ones. It was called the Filthy 15. I absolutely giggle when I look at this list now. I'll just giggle at it because I'm going to read you the list, so you get an idea of the kind of variety of music that was on this list if you don't know it. It's 15, so I'm going to count down 15 to 1. You will be surprised what number 1 is. Surprise me. At 15, you've got Cyndi Lauper with She Bop. 14, Venom, Possessed. I understand that one. 13, Mary Jane Girls, In My House. I don't know who they are. At 12, Black Sabbath's Trashed. Why Trashed of all the Black Sabbath songs? At number 11, you've got Mercyful Fate with Into the Coven. Okay. Def Leppard at 10 with High and Dry. Wasp, now I get this one. Wasp, Animal, Fuck Like a Beast. I get that. I get it. At 8, we've got Madonna's Dress You Up. Have I missed anything? No. At 7, we've got Twisted Sister, We're Not Going to Take It. Get that? I understand that. AC/DC, Let Me Put My Love Into You. I get that as well. Motley Crue's Bastard. Understandable. 4, Vanity, you don't know who they are. Strap On. Robbie Baby. I'm not sure who they are. 3, Judas Priests. Eat Me Alive, which is actually one of my favourite live tracks of Priest. I love that track live, and it's one of my favourite tracks actually, and I can understand where they're coming from there, but here's the weird one. And number 2, Sheena Easton's Sugar Walls. All right, whatever. And at number 1, Prince with Darling Nikki. I don't know, wouldn't you have thought something like Venom's Twisted or Animals Fuck Like a Bastard or Motley Crue's Bastard would have been there at number 1? Anyway, strange how these morals, of course nothing came of it, thank goodness. But it was a way of them reacting. That's why I brought it up, because I want to show you the kind of build a picture of the kind of environment that this band was growing in. People that weren't born then or born just after then, they won't understand the moral and ethical what's the word, censorship that we had to live through. I mean, we have wokeness now, but it's bad, and I find it very irritating. But it's not quite like the same as that you would have had then. I mean, can you believe having music banned because of lyrical content? I mean, it just makes no sense. I don't believe in censorship anyway, unless it's, really, really needed, because adults should make that decision. And if their children or children they know are looking or watching or hearing this stuff, then it's down to them and not down to the content maker himself. The bullet kills the person, the gun fires it, but the human pulls the trigger, right? It's a multifaceted thing. Anyway, we'll come back on the other side. We'll talk a bit more about King Diamond, Merciful Fate, and we'll get into the brilliant and wonderful Mellissa, and some of the facts behind it. Talk to you on the other side. Bye for now.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
It took a lifetime to find the person you want to marry. Finding the perfect engagement ring is a lot easier. At BlueNile.com, you can find or design the ring you've always dreamed of, with help from Blue Nile's jewelry experts, who are on hand 24/7 to answer questions, and the ease and convenience of shopping online. For a limited time, get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more with code LISTEN at BlueNile.com. That's $50 off with code LISTEN at BlueNile.com.
Welcome back, guys, to part 2 of this King Diamond / Merciful Fate / Mellissa episode. I would like to talk to you about some interesting facts that I found about the album Mellissa, which you might, some sort of it's a bit of trivia. The single that was released off it was Black Funeral. The B-side of Black Masses. Black Masses was meant to be on the album, but they didn't like the sound of it, so they put it out as a B-side. The album label wanted them to do a cover, as was the want of the time then of the labels. They recorded a version of Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin, one of Kim's favourite bands. Apparently, it was spectacular. Apparently, he did a really great version of it. But the band decided, thank goodness for that, to be honest, to drop it because they didn't think it linked lyrically with the album. And to be honest, it didn't. It just didn't. Other facts about the album: it's 40 minutes and 9 seconds long, which is a great length for an album. Most of the songs are rooted from lyrically and conceptually from the days of when they were with Black Rose and Bratz. In fact, Curse of the Pharaohs was a Bratz song, which was called Night Riders, which I keep humming. I apologise to the person who doesn't like that. It was Kim rewrote the lyrics and then renamed it to Curse of the Pharaohs. Love Criminals. It was the first song that they wrote for Mercyful Fate, but they rewrote it and renamed it to Into the Coven, the one on the Filthy 15 list, which is also was going to be the album name, but they decided against that. Satan's Fall was said by Michael Denver that it took him forever to learn to get the sound right, the eerie sound right. Hank Sherman, the guitarist, wrote that the music composed he composed the music during sleepless nights in his lounge room with his unplugged electric guitar on his lap, just sort of trying to get through those 16 different guitar solo riffs in there. And he rehearsed it and rehearsed it and rehearsed it so much that it got right on the band's nerves. He kept adding parts according to the band during rehearsals. He'd come into the rehearsal studios with new bits. It's the 11 minutes long, which is the longest. It was the longest song they'd recorded until Dead Again, which was 13 minutes long. It's got dark lyrics. Yeah, the guitar are fast paced. There's double kick drums all over the place. It's very much, you can hear early Metallica, Exodus, and Slayer in this album. Right, it really. I mean, this is not their first album. They had recorded an EP before then, but this is their first full-length album. And because I said the limited time frame, it was recorded quite quickly, and it does come across that way. But I actually really love the DIY kind of ethics of that. In 2017, it was ranked number 17th of the top 100 greatest metal albums of all time by Rolling Stone. The album track listing is on side 1. We have Evil at 4 minutes 45, Curse of the Pharaohs at 3 minutes 57, Into the Coven at 5 minutes 11, and At the Sound of the Demon Bell 5 minutes 23. Then we flip over the vinyl and we get Black Funeral 2 minutes 50, Satan's Fall 11 minutes 23, then the title track Mellissa 6 minutes 40. Now, interestingly, on the extended version, which you can get on most streaming services, that was released on the 25th anniversary, Tony Wilson, he of the Manchester sound, he of Joy Division and all those brilliant bands from the north, and his connection with the Pistols and punk and the 90s rave culture is crazy. I've got a great biography of his called hang on one second, From Manchester with Love. I'd highly recommend reading it. He produced for the BBC's live shows Satan's Fall and Curse of the Pharaohs. Crazy. I'm going to have to hunt those out and listen to those and see what the difference is. Mellissa. The reason it's called Mellissa is because what is well known about King Diamond is he uses a femur bone and a tibia bone wrapped together into a cross for his microphone stand. But before then, he used to have a skull on stage, a female skull, supposedly, and he called it, or her, Mellissa, after a fictional witch that he writes for about in this album. Now, Mellissa got stolen back in the early 80s, early to mid 80s, somewhere in Norway, which is a real shame. There are photographs, if you look at early photographs of King holding Mellissa, some of them have a melted candle on top, a lot of publicity shots of him holding Mellissa. And it was a shame that whoever's got that is never going to give it back. I can't imagine why they would. Shame that they would, but they should. And so, his persona is very dark. I mean, his live show is very operatic and big stage shows, as you can imagine, lots and lots of theatre. And theatre is very much where he comes from, because like the crazy world of Arthur Brown and so on, and he used to set his head alight on a motorbike helmet, all those sort of weird things. and to tell his very operatic stories, because his stories are very, his songs are very story driven and very, very progressive in that respect. So he also, to be honest, they also sort of, this album particularly helped produce to sort of push people towards a prog metal, which we all love, progressive metal, progressive death metal, progressive black metal. All of them have their roots in Mercyful Fate, in my opinion, and of course, I mean, in his amazing solo albums, in King Diamond's work. But we're going to talk about Merciful Fate's album today, which is Mellissa. So, first track off the rank is Evil at 4 minutes 45. Right out of the gate, there he is on stage, black and white face paint, like an evil version of Kiss with an inverted cross in his forehead, around his beard, his semi-long hair and his leather jacket, and the band all long-haired and, you know, getting into it. This is sits in very much as a good opener, because it's nothing, it doesn't go straight into the extremities of what Fate and what Diamond can do. It sounds like a sort of like introductory, here's our sound, very much new wave of British heavy metal. It has a real sort of DIY punk enthused ethic, fast paced rhythmic guitars. You know, it's got a interesting guitar solo. It doesn't take over the song. The drums, as I said before, are sort of fast and heavy. And then, of course, you've got you're in straight away with Diamond's falsetto voice, straight up into those registers where cats will howl and dogs will bark and glass will crack. It's that kind of voice, and it you know, it's one of my favorite tracks on the song, because it doesn't hang on the album, because it doesn't hang around. Good introductory. It's got a good sing-along chorus, which I think you're going to enjoy, because it's, again, not too long straight in to the track. It also changes time signatures all over the place, typical of that genre and of that time period. You know, it's double track vocals. You can hear King's lower registered voice, and behind him and in the distance, his high falsetto tones. It goes from fast-paced, chaotic punk sort of chaos to sort of Sabbath-esque kind of Iommi kind of guitar soloing. Brilliant opening track, and of course he references Satan straight up. You know, it's straight out of the bat. It's not taking any prisoners, but it is an easier track to get yourself into the album if you've never heard Diamond before, or Merciful Fate. The next one is Curse of the Pharaohs. As I said before, was called something else. It has a real chuggy deliciousness of that early metal sound that we were getting in the early 80s. That sort of poorly produced DIY ethic. But this actually, for an album produced in 11 days and very quickly by a band that didn't know what it was doing, is actually pretty well made. Don't let it be fooled by that sound. But it's chuggy. It's actually one of my favorite tracks on the album, because it's got that kind of storyline that you get from these early 80s albums, you know, from bands like Merciful Fate and you know, Praying Mantis and Demon and Satan and all those bands. They were not trying to be about writing songs about mystics and mystical things, I don't think, but it was what was doing the rounds and what people wanted to hear. And I think that these youths that were writing this stuff, all coming from that kind of Black Sabbath, Hammer horror movie backgrounds, were writing songs like this. And you can see why. Like, the great lyrics is here: way out in Egypt, in the Valley of the Kings, where the mummified pharaohs pretend dead in their sleep. He said, don't touch, never ever steal, unless you're in for the kill, or you'll be hit by the curse of the pharaohs. Yes, you'll be hit, and the curse is on you. I mean, I'm not doing this much justice, because he's really belting out the vocals on this. But now, if you're breaking the seals and disturbing the peace, then you're starting up a curse, bringing evil disease. Yeah, don't touch, ever, never steal, unless you're in for the kill, or you'll be hit by the curse of the pharaohs. Yes, you'll be hit by the curse is on you. Or just destroying your future, making it all shady, yeah. So don't touch, never steal. When I say yeah, he's doing a real high yeah on that one. Anyway, you get the idea for the song. It's chugging along. It feels proto-Maiden, in fact, strangely. It could easily be on something like Killers. It has that real sort of chuggy sound to it. That sort of gallop that was going around back then. It also has, as I said, some really fascinating and interesting guitar solos that sort of mingle the Tony Iommi with I can think of like someone like not Steve Vai, Eddie Van Halen, and all those kind of sounding bands. It's got pyrotechnics, but it's not so elongated that you get bored, and it's not fighting with Kim's vocal range, because it would be unlistenable, I think, if you had it like that. Once heard, never forgotten. King's voice here. You will either love it or you will hate it. There is no middle ground with King Diamond. I think that personally you're going to love it, because it's not unlistenable in some respects. And again, here he really holds his restraint back vocally, only using his very high notes sort of sporadically, and it does change rhythms again. Third of the way through, it becomes even more slower and chuggier. It's a little bit more Sabbath-esque, a little bit more Doom-esque, in fact. But again, at trying to find where my notes are. Sorry. Here we go. At 5 minutes, not 5 minutes. At 3 minutes 57, it's not hanging around at all. But coming to the middle of the album, we get into the Coven at 5 minutes 11, the song that's on the Filthy 15. Why is it on the Filthy 15? Well, let's find out. Well, we open with a semi-classical guitar piece that really sets the scene of the Middle Ages or 1600s. It sounds very classical. It also sounds like it's something that I would say that Sabbath-esque is the right term. I'm trying to really dig into my brain where what it sounds like. It does sound a bit like Witchfinder General, Witchfind, that kind of sound that was sort of considered to be like as I've talked to you before, like the Devil's Triad, the three chords that should never be played. It sounds a bit like they're sort of doing something there, building atmosphere. That's what they're doing, they're building atmosphere. And on top of that, acoustic guitar is an electric guitar, double tracked. And then it moves into like, if you listen to the early 80s thrash bands like Warlock, and it sounds like Warlock have been listening to this album and have taken that sound straight into them. It has this sort of, it's not, by no means is it snarling, by no means is it a Venom type track or a Motorhead or anything aggressive. In fact, it's probably borderline easy listening compared to some of the stuff that was coming around, which was much more offensive and aggressive and nasty than this one. I think it happens to be about witches, so that doesn't help from the Filthy 15's list point of view. But you can see why they sort of took it onto the list. I think it's hokum they did that, but it certainly has a lot of gothic atmosphere and a lot of fun to it. It's actually a very interesting song to sing along to, I think. The lyric itself is actually pretty interesting. It's also a really funky piece of music on its own, and what I love about it is you're almost 2 minutes in before any vocals come into the song in a 5 minute track, which means they're really giving the band time to spread their wings and play their music. So I mean, I love lyrics, as you know I do, being a prog head and lyricist, and I just love lyrics, meanings and concepts and ideas. What you're not getting, with some of the bands, they would overfill the area, and you'd lose the reason that you're listening to the music in the first place. And this is a real headbanger, a real neck mover, a real body mover. You really get into the rhythm of it. It makes you move. I would imagine live, this would be you just head down, and get into the juju, as they say. But yeah, really beautiful chuggy double layered guitars, nice and simple bass, but not too simple, and the drums are just holding together it really well until King comes in with a falsetto lyric of "Howl like a wolf and watch and a witch will open the door." Sorry, I can't read my handwriting. "Howl like a wolf and a witch will open the door." Brilliant, and it's sung really high and really punches you. "Follow me and meet our high priestess. Come into my coven and become Lucifer's child. Undress until you're naked and put on this white coat. Take this white cross and go to the middle of the ring. Come into my coven and become Lucifer's child. Now crush it, crush the cross, suck the blood from this unholy knife. Say after me, my soul belongs to Satan. Now you're into my coven. You are Lucifer's child. Into the coven, Lucifer's child." Now you can sort of see lyrically why that they would be offended by that, but it's no more offensive than watching, a cheesy Hammer movie, one of my favorite movies of all time, which is The Devil's Rides Out Hammer movie. Or any of those movies that were coming out around that time. Certainly certainly a lot less offensive than some of the imagery and stuff that was coming from The Exorcist, even, or whatever was flying out from Italy at that time in the era of the 80s. This track particularly really shows off King's vocal dynamic range. He doesn't come down very often into any low register in this song at all. How he keeps it up is beyond me, but the way that he breathes the notes and into the words in this lyric, and I don't need to break down the lyric before you understand what it's about. It's about a witch's coven and selling your soul to Satan. As I said, he's a LaVeyan Satanist from the Church of Anton LaVey, the Church of Satan. And so, this sort of imagery to him is probably quite ludicrous, but he is enjoying the tongue-in-cheek of it, I would say. He's certainly not telling you that's how you live your life. He's certainly not saying that about anything. He's just telling a story, like any horror story, really, but in a brilliant, 5-minute song that is full of great guitars, really traditional and good quality heavy metal, like vocals that will just blow your mind. And in lyrics, like I said, aren't that complicated, but it is probably one of the most perfectly formed songs on the album, and possibly one of the most perfectly formed and produced and recorded heavy metal songs of the early 80s. In fact, I'd be surprised if you'll come across anything as good as this. And you can hear this, particularly this track, you can hear it in Metallica, particularly Ride the Lightning. The opening guitar piece reminds me a lot of some of the stuff that was getting done on Ride the Lightning. Really, really very much so. And so, and Slayer, very, very remnants of it are on Slayer. Slayer's more towards the Venom side, I think. But Exodus and Metallica were definitely sliding more towards Mercyful Fate. So, brilliant track. Where do we go from there? Well, we end up on the 5-minute and 23 track at the end of the A-side called At the Sound of the Demon's Bell. True to form, we get almost a minute of instrumental music to bring you into this fantastic track. Now, I'd say they probably do that so that live, King had a moment to catch his breath, because I'd imagine vocally this is a big workout. And of course, he starts straight into the lyric with a high-pitched falsetto, Halloween is the night. And it doesn't really slack off from there. This is one of the few tracks on the album where he doesn't come down much lower than that screech, that wonderful operatic howl that he has, that wonderful, wonderful, beautiful tone that he brings to his music. And lyrically, it's quite paced. It's quite a long song lyrically for them. It has its typical, by now, Mercyful Fate trademark of changing time signatures, rhythm signatures, beautifully, chaotic guitar solos, Sabbath-esque kind of rhythms, Maiden-esque kind of rhythms even, actually. The lyric is, Halloween is the night, the legend says the ghost will rise. There's a break for lyric for music, and then on Halloween they can't redeem a restless soul from an ancient scene. Terrible rhyme there, but it doesn't come across that way when you hear the lyric, when you hear it sung. At the sound of the demon bell, everything will burn to hell. Rise, 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 it's Halloween. Rise, rise, a ghost will rise. Reconciled with the powers of darkness, he'll uncover a saint. You won't believe, see for yourself. I hear a bell, the sound from hell, the demon bell. I see a light in shadow between the graves, swinging his sword of hate towards the gates of heaven. Beelzebub, Astaroth, bring me the devil. As he says these words, I can't believe my eyes, upon a burning cross. The Lord Jesus, Satan's above. It would be a shame to see the Lord falling again. Now rise, reconcile with the powers of darkness, uncover a saint. You better believe or see for yourself. So, he's using classic imagery there with Beelzebub and Astaroth, the names of some of the devils in the book of Paradise Lost by Milton. He's also talking about, Lord Jesus, Satan's above, like telling that Satan is going to reign over Christ, and you better believe it for yourself. I mean, like some of the cheesy rhyming stuff is very schoolboy rhyming dictionary kind of stuff, but really that does not detract from its the interesting and the beauty of this particular song. Yes, I think that it's probably the most obvious, apart from Evil at the beginning, and Into the Coven, the most obvious sort of black metal sort of imagery that will go on to become quite popular in all of the genres and subgenres subsequent bands that were formed. Curse of the Pharaohs could be sort of traditional, any of those sort of new wave of British heavy metal band albums, but Evil, Into the Coven, and At the Sound of the Demon's Bell definitely sounds so much like it's early black metal. It's really it's starting to sound like the sound we're all sort of used to now. Now we flip over the album and we get Black Funeral at 2 minutes 50, so the single that came off this album, which did not, of course, chart very well, as you can imagine, sadly. But let's have a quick listen and see what we think of Black Funeral. Honestly, this was going to be the single, because if you listen to it carefully, it's a quick 2 minutes 55, as I said. It has all of King's range vocally. Starts off again with that. This time it goes straight into the lyric. There's not much music either side of it. And it bring the black box to the altar is the opening line. And that's obviously traditionally falsetto, as we always do. And then you get now raise your hands and do the sign. And then we get the sing-along part, if you want it to be sing-along. A lower register, it's more of a traditional vocal. Oh, hail Satan. And then he says in a high register, yes, hail Satan. Lay down your swords, the evil star. It's a black funeral. She was a victim of my coven. Open the black box on the altar. Her blood is still hot. Let it out. Oh, hail Satan. Yes, hail Satan. Now drink it. Drink, drink. Forget the whore. It's a black funeral. She was the victim of my coven. So very much right in that ballpark, lyrically, visually, and musically. It's more traditional. It's a good rhythmic gallop. It's not going in into crazy directions. It's not it's quite accessible, and I can see why they released it as a single. You know, is it the best track on the album? Possibly not. Certainly not bad to open the B-side with, because it's quiet and fun and jaunty, if that can be the term, track. Right in the end, right at the end of the track, though, you really can hear the DNA of bands, as I said before, that are coming, that are listening. Young Americans, young Europeans, you know, Slayer, Metallica, particularly Metallica, very much so Metallica. You know, people, when people put this music in the same genre as Venom and as Bathory, I have to sort of have a chuckle, because it's only in the same genre lyrically and visually. Musically, it's a different world. I don't believe that it's anything quite like the brutality and the aggression of Venom, or the intensity of lyrical content and DIY brutality of Bathory. It's sort of in the middle, but people, the reason that it's often cited, I think, as the face of the genre, early genre, is because it was accessible and sort of light-hearted, if in some respects, you know. Although I know that Kim/King would not think that, but you know, in the same way that no one looks on Kiss as thinking they're demons or they're scary. You can't have a makeup on like that and then sing about, you know, loving you all night long, baby. It doesn't quite equate. So therefore, them is an image, and to some extent, I think this was King. Clearly not, because his philosophy is of a satanic nature. But it wasn't always that way. It has grown into that way. Anyway, then we move into the second track off the B-side, 11 minutes and 23 seconds song of Satan's Fall, 16 guitar riffs. Apparently, I haven't counted them, but this is what the guitarist said: 16 guitar riffs, 11 minutes long. It does not stay in one place for very long. It takes you on a journey. A lot like a lot of very long tracks. It does get lost. It does get lost, but it does find its way back. It strays off the path at moments, and you sort of go to yourself, "Oh, where is this going? I don't understand where it's going." And then it will pop back in, and you'll go, "Well, okay, brilliant. This is exactly where I wanted it to go." Very much like the long tracks, like Rome and the Ancient Mariner is a classic example. Sometimes that, and I think it's the greatest heavy metal song ever made. But it does go off on a tangent here and there. It's the same with this. It's the same with Supper's Ready by Genesis, which is 27 minutes long. It goes off on a tangent. Marillion's, 18 minutes long. Grendel goes off on tangents. It has to. It's impossible for it to be focused at that length, at that pace, and that passion. It will stray. The human mind is going to stray and do other things, get a little bit bored and do something else. And I think that's what happens, particularly on this particular track. But very quickly, it doesn't do it. You don't go and go, "I'm going to skip now." It does fall off and come back really relatively quickly, I think. Starting off at a real cracking pace, we jump into the theatre that is Mercyful Fate. This sums this band up to a T. It sums King Diamond up to a T. If you were to ask me, of the many, many, many tracks of the many, many albums of Fate or King's oeuvre, what would I point to say this is him, and this is the band, and this is the sound? And Satan's Fall is it, because he mixes these sort of Wagner-esque vocal notes to these sort of demony, dark, lower registered tones in the drop of a note, not in a different chorus, in the same bloody line of lyric, and that's something special to be able to do. But it also creates characters. It creates images and mental pictures that will stay with you forever once you've listened to this album. I mean, I'll give you the lyric. It's not a long lyric for 11 minutes. It's not a long lyric. They're walking by the night. The moon has frozen blue. Long black coats are sheltered for the rain. Their load must get through. Now bats are leaving their trees. They're joining the call. 7 satanic hell preachers heading for the hall, bringing the blood of a newborn child. Yeah, and that's obviously done in a very high yeah. Go to succeed if it's not Satan's fall. Home, come home. Evil messengers with blood-stained wings. Home, come home. Home, come home. Is it Satan's fall? Question mark. No, it's Satan's call. Craniums high on stakes. It's Satan's epigraph. Something you can't erase. 666. Craniums high on stakes. It's Satan's epigraph. Something you can't erase. 666. They call him the beast. Use your demon eyes and cover the disguise. Time is out, yeah? I don't need your God. Oh, the law of Satan, pray and obey it forever. Oh, the law of Satan. And it says, oh, innocent lovers, it's a lie. Iron fists won't do no good against the evil eyes of 7 holy hell preachers. You don't even try. Now they cross the river Styx and see the castle rise so high, waiting on the other shore for Charion to arrive. A shape with horns and glowing eyes, Satan still alive. He receives sacrifice with evil laughs and pride. You better escape. You've got to escape. You cannot escape. So it actually, for me, is probably what Venom were listening to when they wrote the second album, At War with Satan. Sorry, third album, At War with Satan, I would say, because it is very much a prog-esque story of the fight. The fight. You think it's Satan's fall again, like At War with Satan. You think it's a positive thing, a lovely play on words, but it's actually about if these 7 coated disciples don't get the blood to the altar and don't do the sacrifice, then Satan will not reign. He will fall. Not fall positively. So At War with Satan, I always thought when I first heard it years and years ago that it was against Satan, at war with Satan. No, it's not. It's playing with that English language. It's a war alongside with Satan. And, this song captures that musically. As I said, it has its moments. It comes and goes. It has chaos in guitars. It has low, doomy moments, high-pitched, technical metal rhythms. It doesn't stop though. It doesn't have a moment that lets you relax like you do in something like Rime the Ancient Mariner. Nothing like that at all. Not until you get to this 8th minute mark where you've got to the lyric "Innocent lovers, it's a lie." There's a little bit of space within the notes, a little bit of breath within the vocal, a little bit of sort of drama and reflection. But that doesn't last long. It really doesn't, because at 8 to 10 minute mark you get the chaos of traditional metal again. It's that fast-paced punk-esque side of falling of rocks from a hillside, tumbling of weights. That kind of rumble I'm trying to explain. Really, it's very what really drives the primal side of me. It's what makes the primal deep within me happy. That kind of rhythm. That's why I listen to heavy metal. What's that? It awakens the deep primal instinct within my soul, and I just want to be full of energy. It revitalizes my batteries, my energy levels, to be honest. And it's what makes songs like this so deliciously brilliant that we miss it these days. Yes, there are epic long songs now, and a lot of progressive metal bands do great big long songs, but they're so technical and they're so almost one-noted, one-sounding. You don't get the kind of to and fro and sway that you get from this, because people like Steve Harris and Kim here were listening to prog, traditional prog, like, as I said, stuff that I listen to, like Genesis and Yes and ELP and Van der Graaf Generator, and Gentle Giant, and all those kind of bands that were making this deliciously interesting, breathable, unique sound. And what the new extreme metal progressive bands do is they just become far too, in my mind, even though I love it, it's just a bit too technical, which ruins sometimes the toe and sway of the music. But again, I would have had this as a closer. What a way to close an album, but we've got to move on. And then we end with Mellissa, the title track named after his skull and a fictional witch. Let's find out about that, shall we? Well, we open with a guitar solo that, to be honest, sounds straight off of something that early Candlemass was doing. Certainly the doom aspects of bands of like the same Vitus and as I said, Candlemass were doing that kind of church-like altar music, highly pitched, clean guitar in a very sort of understated, traditional type music. So again, you hear it in bands like Warlock. I hear a lot in Warlock, a lot, in fact, heavily influenced. If you listen to the Warlock's albums, it sounds very much like this. It has a real doomy feel. The song is about a witch, but I think it's about a witch that's passed on. Let's look at the lyrics, right? I'm kneeling in front of the altar, Satan's cross upon the wall. Strange emptiness, a crystal ball between two candles. Mellissa has entered another life. Mellissa, you are mine. Mellissa, you are the light. She was a witch. Why did they take you away? Mellissa, you were the queen of the night. Mellissa, you are my light. I swear revenge. I swear revenge on the priest. On the priest must die. He must die in the name of hell. Mellissa, can you hear me? Mellissa, are you there? Nothing is left outside at the stake. They've taken my love away from me. I think Melissa still with us. So he's taken this story and this concept quite a long way through his career, about a love lost, burnt at the stake. So it's a love song. Weirdly and most beautifully, in the most darkest of ways, it's a love song. It's about losing his love of his life, Mellissa, who was a witch, and how she was burnt at the stake, and how the people that burnt her must die, and how he wants to bring her back. Even he thinks she's still with us, the spirit of Mellissa. And that song does, the opening guitar solo does build that kind of sensitive, that sadness, that kind of wanting and lonely, sort of yearning. It's actually a very beautiful piece of guitar work, honestly. And along with some beautiful backing vocals, this sort of like angel-esque kind of church singing, sort of like being at an altar. It's really beautiful, and King really does pay justice to this lyric. He doesn't overpower it with his voice, which he could do because he has that ability to blitz everything in front of him. He pays tribute to this, to the concept and the thought and the ideas behind this song. It's really quite beautiful, honestly. It doesn't stop it though from having chaotic guitar solos punctuating heavy rhythms, and it's still a traditional heavy metal song. Let's not forget that. Even though it's got a strangely dark and beautiful story, it is still a heavy song, and it's still going to, blast the windows out if you put it up to 11. The guitar solo towards the end, the change of rhythm as it leads it out into some more chugginess, really underlines the way that Mercyful Fate's album Mellissa is why they considered it 17th out of 100. I would consider it higher than that. I think this is probably a cornerstone album of the whole of the heavy metal genre, all the different genres. The same way that Paranoid is with a lot of people for Black Sabbath, and that Number of the Beast is for Maiden, and for me Ride the Lightning is for Metallica. This is one of those albums that if you were going to have only 5 albums to get you through, this would have to be one of them, because it tells a story of the changing scenes and mores of the music scene, from political punk and sort of carefree heavy rock to sort of more dark and challenging images in the future to come, where people wanted to take things one more step forward, and one more extreme, like they always seem to do. But this album straddles that extremity from easy listening, and I hate that term, to extreme metal. It really does sit beautifully in that corridor. If you've never heard any Mercyful Fate or any King Diamond before, this is the album that I suggest you listen to first. It's on all streaming platforms. It's easy to buy on CD. They've reissued it on vinyl if you want a vinyl copy. You can get it on tape. It is lying around on tape, but it's quite difficult to get hold of. I'd urge you to listen to this one first and not the reissue, because, as I said before, listen to how they produced it, how it comes across, then make an effort to listen to the reissue and see the differences. Because if you go straight to a cleaned up reissue version of it, you'll be disappointed when you listen to the original one, because it won't be quite the same. I think take it as they made it, and have a listen to King's voice. It is something supremely different, and I hope one day to see him live. I've never had the opportunity to. He very rarely does stuff these days, recording and touring. He still does, but very rarely, particularly outside of Europe. So take a listen to one of the true legends of heavy metal. I hope this has done it justice. I might have missed some stuff, as I tend to do, or overlooked things. To get it all in one album, 1 hour, is quite difficult. Again, I've gone over to 1 hour 4, but I don't care. Hope you enjoyed it. Happy New Year. Let's do lots more of the similar things coming into this new year. I've got more planned stuff that I really want to talk about. I hope this was a good one for you. I know that I have been a bit self-indulgent in the last 2 episodes around my chatting to Kev, but it was, hey, it's my show, and 200 episodes in, why can't I do what I want to do? Hey, anyway, bye for now. Keep safe, keep rocking. Enjoy Mellissa, because it's a cracker of an album. Bye for now.